My lords, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is an occasion to celebrate the anniversary of a great visionary speech that set out an agenda that would bring peace, prosperity and harmony to the nations of Europe. But tonight, Baroness Thatcher, it is also an occasion to thank you. To thank you, Baroness Thatcher, for everything you have done for our country. Each and every one of us in this room owes you a debt that we cannot repay. You and a small band of colleagues, of whom we are proud to have the most stalwart with us tonight, and I refer to Lord Tebbit of Chingford. Lord Tebbit was the most steadfast, the most stalwart, and he is the greatest Conservative continuing in this generation. It's quite a title you've now got, Norman. Lord Tebbit of Chingford, Companion of Honour. But one of the titles I prefer was that given you by Michael Foot, leader of the Labour Party. He called you a semi-trained polecat. Well, when your opponents call you a semi-trained polecat, you really know you're winning the argument. But I've got some bad news for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I fear that the semi-trained polecat is an endangered species in the Conservative Party. Baroness Thatcher, I believe that the principles that you enunciated when you became leader of our great party in 1975 are even more relevant today. It is my hope that those principles will reassert themselves so that future generations will be as indebted to you as those of us gathered here this evening. You argued for a smaller state. You made that argument a reality. You argued for sound control of public expenditure and sound money. Today, we have a Labour government again, and before this government leaves office, if it does, I can tell you it will be consuming over 50% of the nation's resources. All of the themes that you pursued as leader of the opposition, we have heard very little of in recent years. But it is now time to bring them back. Today, Britain faces a crisis as serious as any that you faced as Prime Minister. But it is not a crisis of capitalism. It is not a crisis of private enterprise. Over my lifetime, there have been several episodes of financial excess. Boom followed by bust. And at the heart of each episode is a government that has created monetary excess. Today is no different. Our Prime Minister Gordon Brown argues that the answer is more regulation. Did he really need an army of regulators to tell him that 125% mortgages were a sign of monetary excess? Our Prime Minister believed he'd abolish the economic cycle. No more boom and bust. Only a socialist could display such arrogance as to believe that government could abolish the natural rhythms of the market. He has dubbed his period as Chancellor of the Exchequer the age of irresponsibility. Everybody was irresponsible except him. But I think he's misdescribed that period. I think it would be more accurately described as an age of illusion. The illusion of prosperity was created. The illusion of prudence was created. The reality was profligacy on a great scale. Indeed, it was an illusion so powerful that even the Conservative Party foolishly endorsed Labour's spending plans. Now the Conservative Party seems uncertain what to say or think. They could do no better than to enunciate the principles of sound money, strict control of public expenditure, and good housekeeping, which you articulated as leader of the opposition. And where does the European Union stand in this crisis? Is it a help or is it a hindrance? Well, you may think that we're going to suffer some very serious difficulties, but let me tell you, if we had joined the euro, those difficulties would have been so much greater. We would have had inappropriately low interest rates, which would make the brown boom look insignificant. Those of us that have argued against the euro currency over the years have always said, one size does not fit all. And now we have the proof of that. And let us remember that the European Central Bank, no less than 3 months ago, raised interest rates in the face of a period of deflation. But that's, I suppose, what you get when a central bank is run by a Frenchman who wants to make the bank more Bundesbank than even the Germans intended. What else has the European Union done for us in this crisis? Well, I'll give you one small example. When the private sector came to the Governor of the Bank of England with a rescue plan for Northern Rock, he believed he couldn't act because if he did, it would breach the terms of the European Union Directive on Market Abuse, which our own Parliament doesn't have the power to amend. Thank you very much, European Union. And even in the last week, we've heard from Mr. Sarkozy that he wants the EU to impose measures so that foreign entities do not take an interest in our weakened financial institutions. That's exactly what we do want to happen. It is much better that financial entities from overseas provide capital to our weakened institutions, rather than the taxpayers of Europe are required to put their money in. Mr. Sarkozy, I've got news for you. Protectionism was a major cause of the Depression in the 1930s. Now, let me make one thing clear. The Bruges Group is not an anti-European organisation. We have many allies around Europe. Some of them have joined us this evening. All of us have one thing in common. We're opposed to the directives and to the regulations that the European Union impose upon our people. And we are concerned that our so-called sovereign parliaments cannot change or amend those directives and regulations. Many of them are not in the interests of the prosperity and success of the peoples of individual countries within the European Union. We believe these actions are damaging. We believe that the man in Brussels doesn't know best. Most of us also believe that we would be better off not in the European Union. Most of us also believe we would be better off out if we had never joined. Baroness Thatcher, it's 20 years since you made the Bruges Speech. A great speech, but the vision in that speech is still unfulfilled. It's a time to look back, but it's also a time to look forward. When I look back just 18 years, I remember that day you resigned. And I suspect that many of you in this room remember that day. It was a shock at the time. I remember getting the news when I was in my office, and I swiveled on my chair and I stared out of the window for about 15 minutes while my brain tried to absorb the implications of what had happened. I felt that my life would become more difficult, and I felt that the future of our country would be less bright. I felt that the reforms that still needed to happen wouldn't take place. I thought that the powers of the European Union over this country would increase. All of those things have happened. History will show that 1990 was no time for Britain to start resting on its laurels again. It's time to re-adopt your principles and put them at the forefront of our national life. It's time for Britain to reform again. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for you listening to those few words. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker, the Right Honourable Lord Tebbit of Chingford. Tonight, we have a unique opportunity to hear from a man that was at your side during those vital years in opposition and in government, a leading architect of reform, a man whose views have been consistent and constructive throughout. 20 years ago, if I were organising a dinner such as this, I would have chosen Norman Tebbit as our speaker. Today, he still has no rival in clarity and consistency of his views. It is a great privilege to introduce Lord Tebbit of Chingford.